Greetings everyone and welcome to another episode of First Thoughts. Today we are reviewing Black Panther, the first MCU film of 2018. Now before I carry on, this is a spoiler review. I will be talking about the film in its entirety, or at least my thoughts on it, so if you have not seen the film yet, I recommend you save this video for later. Go out there, watch Black Panther, then come on back so you can hear my thoughts and see if you agree with them or you don't agree with them. But if you don't care about Black Panther and you just want to hear my thoughts, then proceed anyway. But this is a spoiler review. With that in mind, let's get started, shall we? So the first thing I gotta say about this film that I really enjoyed is the performance from the great cast. Ryan Coogler, who directed this film, did a good job at bringing out some of the best performance I've seen from many of these actors. Chadwick Boseman did a fantastic job again playing T'Challa, or Black Panther, and given his performance from Civil War, the Captain America film, I was really hoping to get more of that because I really enjoyed how he was portrayed in that film. I was not disappointed at all. I really felt for him. The story continued on from Civil War, and you can tell he is still trying to go through his father's murder and still dealing with being the new king of Wakanda. And I thought he did a fantastic job emoting the difference between what does it mean to be a king for Wakanda, as well as entering this new century of superheroes, and that was his place in all this. And I just think he did a wonderful job putting in a little bit of that duality of living up to the duty of being king, but also being a beacon of hope for many other people who idolize him. The other standout performances that I gotta give a shout out to, I'm gonna butcher on this actress's name a little bit, but Lupita Nyong'o. I feel really bad not knowing how to pronounce her last name, but she played Nakia, who is the spy or the assassin, if you will, for Wakanda and the king. And I thought she did a fantastic job trying to bring out T'Challa's loyalty to the Wakanda throne. And I can't wait to see more of her ongoing in the MCU. Speaking of badass females in this film, Okoye, played by Denai Gorira, again I apologize if I'm butchering your name, I'm not really familiar with these actors and actresses. She did a fantastic job playing the other side of Nakia, who is more loyal to the throne, serving the king and following traditions, but at the same time trying to find out what is her place in relation to T'Challa and whether or not she's got to serve the throne or serve her friend, which proves to be a very interesting story to watch unfold throughout the film. And I don't want to forget Shuri, Princess, played by Letitia Wright. I thought she was a really cool character, and I know she plays I think the younger sister to T'Challa, and she's apparently supposed to be the smartest woman on Earth, and it really shows. She practically runs the science division for Wakanda and utilizes a lot of weapons and a lot of Black Panther's suits. So what separates her from Tony Stark, which I personally liked, is that she doesn't really rub it in your face of how smart or great she is, but she likes to play ball and help out people who really need it. She has that sense of passion and just something that almost anyone can relate to who really wants to make an impact or just contribute to their friends, help out, be there when someone really needs them. And I thought she did a fantastic job. And again, I really apologize if I mispronounced those actresses' names. Not familiar with them, I'm sorry, but I really liked your performance, guys. Now, I don't want to forget Martin Freeman. He did a fantastic job playing Agent Ross, who, if you're familiar with him in Civil War, some people complained about him saying he was a little too much of his Martin Freeman with his, what? Okay, I didn't say that. Which I personally don't mind, those little mannerisms the actor brings to his roles, but he did cut it back down a little bit in this film, and he kind of acted like us as the audience being thrown in this world of Wakanda, because in this world, no one really knows what Wakanda really is like. It's kind of portrayed as a third world country, at least to the UN and the rest of the countries around the world. No one really knows how technologically advanced or prosperous they are. So he kind of goes in, a fish out of water, which a lot of films gotta have that, especially with some fantasy science elements to it, goes in and becomes our eyes and our reasoning. Seeing all this great technology, such advancement in a place that you would not expect, and he took it like a champ. He's an agent who's there to help out, considering all the facts that he's going against. Martin Freeman, you did a good job. I rarely doubt your performances in anything you're in. Another great performance I want to bring up real quick is Andy Serkis. Now, for those who know that he is the motion capture king, he's known to play this really eccentric, kind of crazy guy. I mean, you've seen him in Gollum, you've seen him in, Adventures of Tintin. He played Hatticus. Haddock. That was it. Haddock. I really enjoyed his energy, and I really wish the film had more of him, but they kind of killed him off in a way which makes sense to the plot of the story. But we did get a taste of him a little bit in Age of Ultron. We saw more of him in this, but he was a little bit of an afterthought, not really the main antagonist of this story. So I was kind of disappointed that he was like brushed off real quickly, and what can you do? It's probably like one of the only big cons for me is like I just wish we had more of Ulysses Claus. Yeah, that would have been cool to have. Last but not least, we gotta give it to Michael B. Jordan. He really brought in a very interesting performance. Now, there are some things about him, or at least his performance, that kind of slipped into my cons of the film, but first things first I gotta point out is I thought the way he approached himself against all the Wakandans, he really stood out as an outsider trying to come back in to embrace his heritage, but also kind of juggle his own personal demons that he wants to rectify. He had that cool wild card about him, and for that, I really think it brought good contrast to the heroes and what they were trying to save. But I'm not going to get into the cons about him just yet, and they're mostly just nitpicks. They're not like major game-breaking cons, but there were some things about his performance that I didn't quite like, but we'll get into that later. So another pro for me is the themes. Another thing I really enjoyed about this film was the fascinating undertones and themes that kind of revolve around the whole story and some of the characters. On a personal level, I really like the fact that the Wakandans have ascended pretty much the top of human evolution, and the rest of the world, which has not caught up. Part of the characters believe that if they shared some of their technology and culture to the world, that they could better them, that they can solve some of the medical plights and technological advancements for conveniences, but they're afraid if they show a little too much of their hand that all-out chaos may ensue. And I thought that was a really interesting angle that they were kind of covering there. You have like these amazing entities that are human-based, but all the other humans around the world have yet to even like live up to their level. So the idea of like, should we share our knowledge with them, or should we just continue to seclude ourselves and just focus on us? Can we give back to those who haven't really served us? Maybe that'll open new opportunities of ideas or things like that. And I think that's the really cool undertone about this whole film that I took away, at least. The other undertones that I think really stood out for this film goes back to Killmonger. See, in that film, he's actually the cousin to T'Challa. Eric Killmonger grew up in America, and he was actually the descendant of T'Challa's father's brother. So he's pretty much T'Challa's cousin. And so both of them grew up in completely different environments. And Killmonger kind of saw what humanity did to people of his heritage throughout the years. There's all that history and all that buildup that the Wakandans themselves are probably not even privy to. So he has a different idea of what he could use this technology for, what he could use his Wakandan heritage to give back to his people who are not within the walls of Wakanda. So yeah, there's a lot of commentary there that's interesting to explore. And believe me, with nowadays things, it's actually kind of interesting how I mentioned a wall. Another thing I really enjoyed about this film is the soundtrack. Now, when it comes to superhero films, you usually get those cinematic kind of tones. I know it sounds nothing like that. But what I loved about this soundtrack is that it kind of had a little bit more of the campiness of the strings, like the Ascensions and all that. But what's cool about it is that they threw in a bit of the tribal African drum and percussions to it, as well as some of the wind instruments to kind of make it stand out on its own. So yeah, it had the orchestral campiness a little bit to it, but also had some of the drum sets to really like mesh it together and like energize you when certain scenes are happening, pursues, fights, things like that. And I just thought it married really well, and no question about it, I'm gonna get the score as soon as it's available. Last thing I want to cover in my pros is the visual effects, particularly the interior scenes. Much like the soundtrack, I was really fascinated by some of the African culture mixed into some of the scenery in the Wakandan city. What's cool is they not only had like a science lab or engineering station, but the walls themselves had like murals displaying some of their history or just some of their culture, and it blended in really well together. I really like that. Whether it's the throne room or whether if it's the gorilla tribe. I actually kind of forget what they're called, but I love all the minor aesthetics, the subtleties in it. It really told you, yes, this is all about Wakanda, the 5 tribes throughout history that have come together and kind of continue to build off of that. And even with some of the most advanced technology on Earth in the MCU, they were still able to incorporate some of that in their architecture and technologies. So putting that on film, it looked like a place I would want to visit. Like if Disney World ever made a theme park centered around Wakanda, I'd totally visit it. That'd be an awesome place to visit. So I'm gonna jump straight into my cons. So speaking of the visual interior shots, the visuals actually kind of seep into one of my nitpick cons, and that's the exterior shots. Now I know I said I would love to visit Wakanda and just like hang out in those buildings, but whenever we had like skyline scenes or anything like that, I'll be honest with you, I was a little underwhelmed of the majestic city of Wakanda as a whole. And I understand that it's trying to deal with the traditional nature and technology meets together, kind of like skyline culture, but it felt a little too muted for my taste, and I was kind of expecting a little bit more taller buildings or more patterns, if you will, that peek beyond the horizon of Wakanda. But once you get in close and you see the streets or you see the throne rooms, facilities, what have you, that's when it really stands out of how rich Wakanda is. Personally, another thing that didn't work for me was the fight choreograph. It just didn't really feel like I was watching a life or death combat. Like it felt like more of a martial arts demo, if you will. I mean, it just felt like that to me, the way the cameras were just set up, the sound mixing that they used, the angles of each punch and kick and wrestling moves. I didn't really quite feel the power of each punch or kick, especially when T'Challa, Black Panther, was fighting Killmonger at the very end of the film. It felt like a wrestling match with not much impact, which is fine. I still think the film is overall fantastic, but I didn't really feel the whole guttural stakes, if you will. And last but not least, I mentioned earlier that I really liked the cast, and Michael B. Jordan aesthetically stood out, but there was something about his performance that didn't quite grab me the way as my cohorts have said. His dialogue delivery was a little odd to me. Like, I understand he grew up in Oakland and has a different sense of culture and accent to him as the other Wakandans who are African native born. But every time he talked, I don't know why, I felt like he was gonna break out in song or something, or like he was trying to give a speech to a whole crowd of people. Like he was really trying to project himself in the room when it wasn't really needed in some parts. It didn't bother me that much, but I just kind of wish he was a little more breathy. I don't know. Now, before I give you my overall impression, I do want to talk about the spoilers. So again, I haven't really gave away much so far in my pros and cons, but if you still have not seen the film and you want to see it for yourself, I really recommend you save this video for later and finish it then. Otherwise, I'm just gonna start talking about it. Spoiler alert, I think the Wakandans definitely have some connection with the Soul Stone. The film itself never confirmed it, but part of the tradition of becoming king of Wakanda is that they gotta ingest this type of liquid, if you will. It's kind of a bluish purple liquid that once ingested and you're buried in the sand, you start to visit the astral plane, if you will. Well, not quite Doctor Strange astral plane, but you get to see your ancestors, the past kings who have been of Wakanda. And part of me just thought about the Soul Stone, which is pretty much all about resurrection / afterlife type things. You know, the Soul Stone, it's given in its name. And I have a feeling that the asteroid that fell and landed in exactly where Wakanda is not only carried vibranium, but has a connection to the Soul Stone itself. And they're still mining that meteorite, by the way. And as Killmonger said, or maybe it was Claw, they have yet to scratch the surface. So I have a feeling it's in there and we're gonna see it in Infinity Wars. Lastly but not least, the post-credit scenes. The first one didn't really need to be a post-credit scene. I kind of feel like it should have been before the actual start of the credits. It's pretty much just T'Challa, Nakia, and a few others who go to the United Nations to address that Wakanda is opening its doors to the rest of the world and want to share some of their technology and whatnot to everyone else on the planet. That's pretty much it. Now the second post-credit scene is actually more interesting. We actually get to see Bucky Barnes resurrected and feeling better since he did in Civil War. So that's obviously going to lead to Infinity War. I say that was worth it, but that was the very last post-credit scene, so be warned of that. Alright guys, I gotta wrap this up. So what's my overall impression? I give it a good. I really enjoyed the film. Wasn't the best. Had a few little flaws in it to not really emote to me, but I feel like the way it's representing the black community and being part of the MCU, a proven shared cinematic universe, I think this is definitely gonna make waves. And whether if you can relate to that stuff or not, I still think it's a great movie that you're gonna enjoy. So I highly recommend it. Again, thumbs up. Totally recommending. Alright everyone, let me know what you thought of the film if you saw it. Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like what I'm doing here, be sure to give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Tune in next time folks when I watch something else. And as I like to say here, to be continued.